There's 77,000 real estate agents in the Greater Toronto Area and approximately 125,000 in the country, in all of Canada. Now, you can get all the information from real estate agents, but why not go to the best? And my first guest, there's a reason I brought him on first, is because he is a wealth of knowledge. Not only does he have a real estate brokerage of 1,500 agents? Why is that important for you? Because you need to know this type of information when you lead such a large organization. But this gentleman has created massive generational wealth in real estate in our city. And for my friends, you guys seen this beautiful face before, Mr. Christopher Slightham. How you doing today, brother?
I'm well, Jazzy. How are you?
Well, you can tell, buddy. I'm coming with.
I was going to say you've got no energy this morning. I was a little concerned about you. Your energy level seemed low. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Because I'm so excited, and that's where the energy's coming from, brother, is because we get an opportunity, myself and Simeon, VP Laura Stewart, Director of Team Operations Bobby Pume, and the rest of our team, and alongside you, we have an opportunity to educate people. And our tagline here at REC Canada is lead with education, right? Because, look, when you're buying a pair of shoes, or even maybe something as expensive as a car, you could maybe make a bad decision, right? And you could maybe do it really quickly in a day or two. Yeah. But when it comes to real estate and you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, you need to make sure you get the information, and that's why you're here. Okay. I want you to help me educate our viewers and listeners today, because some people are taking their dog for a walk, they're on the treadmill listening to this, about what we're currently seeing in the GTA market. And look, I know you don't have the crystal ball. I know you're not Nostradamus, but you've been doing this for a very long time. Your family's been at it for approximately 6 decades, I believe. That's right. Hence why we bring him on, guys. Like, this is why. I want to also talk about what your thoughts are where we might see it. So let's start with currently, what are you seeing in the GTA market? Because all these changes with the interest rates, it's really put out a lot of information, some correct and some not so. Yeah.
Jazz, great questions, and thanks so much for having me. I just love chatting about real estate. As you said, we've done it for a little while, so super passionate about it, and happy to share what we can. As you said, too, we don't have a crystal ball, but we do study the market, and studying the market allows you to make great decisions. And so one thing we're seeing right now, which I think everybody feels, is that the Bank of Canada wanted to purposely slow down or eliminate inflation, or bring it at least back into its range, more normal target range of 2 to 3%. And as we know, we got up to 8%, and that's something that's unsustainable. So the Bank of Canada did their thing, and they had to move a lot, probably harder and stronger than they ever thought they had to do. And just for good measure, because the spring got a little hot, they had to add a couple of more changes, June and July. And naturally, what happens when the cost of things, whatever they might be, rise, generally speaking, we take a pause and say, oh, wait a second, let me just assess the situation here before I make my decisions. And so that's what's happened, I think, in real estate right now, is people have, the cost of mortgages have been rising, and they paused for a little bit in January. They stopped the rate moves. We had an extra benefit. The bond market kind of corrected a little bit or changed in March and April. And so 5-year fixed mortgage money came down about 75 basis points, almost a full %. So there was a little window of opportunity in there where buyers thought, oh my goodness, this is good. I feel confident. I feel certain about my ability to buy. And so they did.
Now, something that we've also noticed in this, call it maybe about 18-month period, probably closer to 12 months actually, while these interest rate increases have been happening, is for tenants, the rents have been going up as well. Yeah. Why does that happen? Like, if you can just maybe go into detail there, because I know a lot of people who are watching right now, their majority are investors, but there's some people who are wanting to get into their first property, and they're seeing all these costs also go up from a rental perspective. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, really, Jazz, it comes down to growth. And as you know, our country is growing at the fastest pace since 1957.
Okay.
So percentage growth-wise. And for the first time in history, in 2022, we welcomed over 1 million people in a year.
In the country.
In the country.
Okay.
And of course, we live, we're talking, you asked about GTA because that's where we, do most of our business. And where do most people end up? About 35 to 45% of people land in the Greater Toronto Area. Some years it's even higher than that.
And really quickly, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I always say that the main reason for that, and some of my West Coast people don't take offense to this, it's just that the GTA, Toronto proper, like downtown, is really the financial heartbeat of the country, right? We have all the major schools here. We have all the major banks here, like we have Bay Street here, the hospitals. It's where the jobs are. And I think when most people are thinking outside of our country, like, where do I want to go in Canada? Well, you probably want to go where the jobs are so you can make some money, right?
And that's why we tend to get a large proportion. So everybody needs somewhere to live. And if you're coming to Canada, maybe for your first year or two, we've done studies that show that most people will rent for the first year or two to try and determine where they'd like to land, where they'd like to settle. So that puts pressure on rental costs. Then you have a scenario where there's uncertainty about the market. So people need houses. So instead of buying, they might say, you know what, we're going to rent for a year. Let's see where interest rates go, and then we'll make our decision. So that adds more pressure on the rental market, because we've come to determine that with the growth that we have in population, we just don't have enough supply to really service the needs of our growing country. And that's, simple economics 101, supply and demand. We've got massive demand, supply isn't standing up, and of course now we have pressure on costs.
The question I get a lot on social media from videos, as well as our clients just in our real estate action plans, like that consultation that we do, is, when's it going to stop? When's this bubble going to burst? And because you have so much data and experience from like the grandfather Slightham to dad Slightham to you now, and your brother Jeff Slightham does an amazing job with data. What's your answer to that? Like, when is this bubble going to burst, or when is this all going to stop?
Great question. I think that you have to really understand that if our country's plan is to welcome 1 million people a year for the foreseeable future, and that's the stated range of immigration that we're expecting, permanent and non-permanent combined, it's hard to see an end to the pressure on prices, either rental or purchase. In the short term, because there's uncertainty around where rates are going, we're seeing a softer resale market right now, and it's just because there's a pause. And we have learned this year how resilient our market is, because we just touched on it just for a second there before, that the Bank of Canada, January 25th, their first rate announcement in 2023 said, okay, we're going to pause. They've been raising rates since March of 22, and they moved faster than they've ever moved in the history of rate setting. So they started setting rates in 1935.
Okay.
And in that time frame, since 1935, they have never moved rates as fast as they've needed to, or they felt they needed to at this time. So as soon as they hit the pause button, people said, oh, okay, rates aren't going to go up any further. I understand where rates are today. We had the added benefit of a little bit of a pullback in the bond market, bond rates in March and April, as I said. The 5-year fix came down about 75 basis points. That really inspired people to say, oh, this is really good too. Prices had come down from their unhealthy peaks of February 2022, and rates had stabilized, rates had come down a little bit, and all of a sudden the market took off. And we saw a 15% price increase from January to May, which, if you know,
it's only a 4-month period.
That's only a 4-month period. Prices. But what that showed us is that how much need there is out there and how much want to own real estate in the GTA when there's certainty, when people feel comfortable. Right now, unfortunately, we moved too quickly. Prices moved too quickly in a short period of time. Bank of Canada said, well, wait a second here. We're going to have to tighten the screws a little bit more. June, July, rate increases. They've done exactly what they wanted. It caused people to pause because there's, oh, what's happening? Let me just pause for a minute. It's not like I don't want real estate. It's not that I don't need a home. I just want to pause and assess what's happening. And that slows things down. It's calmed things down a little bit. And now we're into a market where we're going to wait and see. Bank of Canada said in first announcement in September. Of course, we know now they held the rates this time. There's a debate whether they're going to raise the rates on October 26th on the next announcement. So again, are they going to raise it? Are they not going to raise it? A little bit of uncertainty there. So I think we're going to see it kind of just bubble along here for a little bit. And then if they hold rates in October and we start to sense that, okay, this is the end of the rate raising cycle, then I think you'll see some more activity come back into the market.
And would you agree, just an open debate about it, in terms of where we might see rates kind of start to level off, like this, what we were seeing in 2020 and 2021, 5-year fixed rates at like 2.5%. Yeah. I think there was an introductory rate at one point, 1.99. Like, it was really crazy. I feel like specifically the younger generation, so let's call them the 25 to like maybe 35 age group, they feel like that is what the rate should be. But someone who's been at it for a little bit longer, you like how I did that? Like, I'm not saying somebody who's older or anything. Like somebody who's been at it.
It's early in the day.
I don't want to hit the eagle that
exactly,
early.
Exactly.
Not that early.
The old guy.
Right. The veteran at it.
Thank you.
Yeah. The experienced gentleman. Would you say that the rates being maybe, like, I think they're too high now. Like this, I'm not sure if this is where it's going to average out. Yeah. But is it safe to say like maybe around that 4.5% to kind of 5%? Like, my first property was back in 2006. I got a 5-year fixed at 4.5%. Yeah. I left the bank thinking I robbed it.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh my God. Like,
because
this
it was 7 or 8 2 years before
exactly,
that,
right? And so where do you see that leveling off happening? And and maybe the other question, sorry to throw 2 parts at you, but like, what would be good for the economy?
Great question. And I think the real answer is we don't have enough information yet to really confidently know where that's going to be, because we've got to allow this unwinding of all this stimulus that they needed. We have to remember, Jazz, like, we just went through a global pandemic, a global
it seems
health.
Like it was long time ago.
It was like yesterday,
exactly,
in the real grand scheme of history,
yes.
right? It was like yesterday that it happened. They purposely dropped rates to allow the world to function when everybody was sitting at home. We have to remember that was a purposeful decision they made. They probably held them a little too low for a little too long. You know, hindsight's 2020. There was no playbook for it, so they had to kind of figure it out.
And I think that's so important that you mentioned that, right? And I've heard you say that before. Like, there was no playbook for this. We have no clue what we should be doing. So I love that.
Yeah, right? So let's acknowledge that first. Let's acknowledge that they have to get inflation under control. Arguably, I think your comment there about 4.5%, 5% feels to me right now like where it might land. But I think the biggest point you want to make is, regardless of where it goes, I don't think you want to be waiting for 2.5% or 3% money, because this is the massive misconception we're seeing out there with both investors and end users. We hear all the time, "Oh, I'm waiting till the interest rates drop." Well, let's do a quick analysis.
Yes.
In the spring, interest rates dropped 3/4 of a point, right? So 75 basis points, 3/4 of 1%. Prices went up on average $120,000 in 90 days. Do you know how much that cost people to try and save 3/4 of a point? In the total cost, you think about it, if you're sitting on the sidelines right now thinking, I'm going to wait till rates come down. Okay, great. Let's think that through for a sec. We're going to wait, which means I'm not out there looking. I'm not buying. I haven't been looking. It takes 60 to 90 days to kind of get comfortable with the market, I find, as a buyer.
For sure.
Like, you're buying, you said it earlier, you're not buying just a pair of shoes or a car even, which is expensive, but these days especially. But, it's not a lifetime investment here. You're buying a major asset. So it takes a little bit of time. So you think about it, if you see rates, rates are coming down. Okay, now I'm going to start looking. all of a sudden, by the time you get geared up and get back into the market, if rates do come down, if that's what you're truly waiting for, prices are going to be up. Your overall costs are going to be significantly higher than paying even 6% for interest rate for today. Like, we just did a quick analysis the other day where if you take the average sale price in May from the Toronto Real Estate Board versus the average sale price in August, it's actually come down about $80,000, right? So on average, it costs about $80,000 less to buy a house in August.
On the purchase price.
On the purchase price,
Yeah.
right? And let's say interest rates went up 50 or 75 basis points in that time period, let's say. Maybe you had a locked-in rate from April if you bought. Your payment today at 6% interest is less than the payment you would make at 5.5% interest or 5.25% interest because of the price you had to pay back in May for the same asset. I know it's hard to explain without a piece of paper or without a diagram.
Yeah.
And maybe, I know you have all these
We have
resources
all
for all your folks, and
Yep.
you'll likely put that together for people to understand. But it's a little technical, but I really want people to understand when they're viewing real estate. First of all, this is a moment in time, right? That we tend to concentrate in our life on what's going on right in the moment. And I get it. We're human. That's what we have. This is what's happening. But really, real estate, you've got to look at over the lifetime ownership of the property.
I call it like in 10-year windows, right? Like decade. Is that
Absolutely.
Okay.
Real estate, to me, is not a trader's game. Now, people do, they buy, they refurb, they flip. That's a whole strategy as well.
It's a business.
It's a business.
Yeah.
That is it. You're right. That's a great way to see it. It's a business. But investing in real estate involves time. And I think a 10-year view of it is the minimum way to look at it. And the results that you're going to get from it are going to be fantastic. The idea is we get stuck in the moment with what's going on. And I think we tend to, cloud our judgment in what the right thing might be to do. Like, you think about it, Warren Buffett says you want to be buy when people are selling and sell when people are buying. Well, in general, there were way more buyers out in the market scouring, fighting over houses in February of 2022 when prices were at their new record, right? So here we are today. Prices are down maybe 15% roughly, give or take, since that moment in time. And there's not as many buyers in the market, and there's some great opportunities. So it's actually counterintuitive what's happening in today's market.
And we can speak about the emotional distress that you go through when you're competing in offers as well with other people, right? Like, we've been through that over and over again. You also are an investor yourself.
Yes.
And I would like to probably think that, like, that's probably first and foremost after being an amazing dad, husband. I think maybe even before the business, it's like your investing portfolio. When you're investing and looking at investments now,
Yes.
what's that like checklist in your head to say, okay, I want to make sure that this investment performs. Maybe it's from a performance perspective on like annual return, rate of return. Maybe it's location based. What is like Chris kind of want to make sure he checks off in his head?
Location is always important to us, for sure. You want to make sure that you have because and when you talk about investment property, we invest in rental homes, properties, whether it's condos, houses, apartment buildings. That's always our choice of investment. And so we look for access to transportation, what the job market is around the area. Is there a great school that has a real need for student housing in the area? Really the demand component. And transportation is a big one. And then we look at the long-term view, because we're a buy and hold strategy. That's what we do, because we're really interested in creating recurring revenue over time, right?
Which means, because I want to make sure, because there might be somebody who's like, literally this is the first time they heard the word real estate investing. When you say buy and hold, and that recurring revenue, it's because then the mortgage gets paid down, and then you're going to take the cash flow over time.
That's right.
Okay, and then will you refinance in there? Or what's
Generally not.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, awesome.
generally not.
Yeah, I love the fact that and this is so important for everyone to understand, that not all strategies are for everyone.
That's right.
Right? Where I'd like to do a lot of refinancing, I don't think that makes Chris right or wrong, or vice versa. And you notice, so continue in terms of the buy and hold aspect.
Yeah, so if you look at it this way, Jazz, over time, you buy the property day one, you put X% down, the tenant basically pays off the mortgage for you over, call it 20, 25 years, whatever it might be. So the further you get down the road, obviously the cash flow improves because the mortgage is getting smaller and smaller, and now you've got this recurring revenue. And equity growth, of course, and value growth, which people love to talk about. Oh, I made $200,000 on this property, right? I think I'm going to cash in. Well, let's think about that for a second. We cash in, we pay a portion in taxes. So let's say it's a capital gain, because it's maybe not business income, it's capital gain. So 25% of it, let's say, goes. So now you've got on a $200,000 gain, you got $150,000 left. That's a tidy profit, and it's a lot of money. I get it. That being said, if you had to live on that money, how long would you then be able to live for on that money?
Especially with the silent killer inflation.
Correct.
Okay.
So we look at it another way and we say, okay, if we keep that property, sure, there's great equity growth in there. And I agree, I don't disagree with the refi and buy more. I think especially when you're in a growth mode with your portfolio, you want to look at that opportunity in a healthy, manageable way. You don't want to over lever. But you look at it and you say, okay, all of a sudden I've got a property that's paid for. Maybe it's cash flowing $1,000 a month, $2,000, $3,000, whatever. Whatever's relevant to your situation. Well, every month on the first of the month, there's money in your account. Boom, forever. It never stops. And so if you think about that opportunity, if you have one, if you have two. Some people buy 5, 10, who knows, right? You just multiply that by the number that you have, and you think about that recurring revenue every month. And you think, okay, that's refilling my coffers without me having to go to work every day. That's a pretty cool retirement strategy. And that's the way we've looked at it.
Especially in Canada, where we're not sure in the next 30 years if that pension plans and the funds will be there, the CPP and all that. We're not sure if that's going to be there.
And if you know, and respectfully, they're not a lot,
right,
every month in these checks that are being, so you'll likely need a supplement of some sort to maintain your lifestyle, if that's a possibility.
And so, is that what essentially generational wealth means to you? Like in terms of the fact that you're keeping it for a long period of time? Some people ask me the question then, like, when do I sell it? For me, I'm always like, I'm never going to sell it. I'll give it to the kids. I'll figure out strategies on passing it on to them. You can, and if you don't have kids, you can pass it on to like, you can literally give this to somebody. There's a lot that you can do.
Yes.
Give back to the community. Is that always the thought process of yourself and your family?
Absolutely. We're definitely long-term thinkers. We are not sellers of real estate. In a general sense, we're not good for the supply side because we do, but we keep it.
You hold on to it.
We hold on to it. We take great care of it. We provide great rental opportunities for the community as well, and how we approach our properties. But we do hold, and when they talk, the concept of generational wealth is becoming talked about more and more, and I appreciate that very much, and I think it's slow, steady. It's not glamorous, Jazz. It's not fancy. It's not, oh, you made $1 million. Over time, it really does a great job. But in the short term, it's not like you're going to make headlines about it. It's going to be very quiet, very slow and steady. But if you think about every decade, what real estate values do, and what that can do for you as an investor. And then if you can set it up for a generational asset, you just think if you have time, and time is always the friend of a real estate investor, The only time where I say real estate becomes a real challenge if time is not on your side.
Okay.
Right? So if you are in a position where you can't hold something and the market is the market and you have to make a decision at that moment in time, that's where, we run into, you hear stories of people, unfortunately, not having a great real estate result.
I love what you said about the slow and steady, because I know that's how you think about your business. I know that's definitely how you think about investing. I'm always reminded about the tortoise and the hare. Like, we know who won. It's that slow and steady. There is so many people out there that talk about having the 100 doors, and it's great maybe for inspiration, but I wish my parents, who came from India in 1974, they father taxi driver, mother factory worker, nobody really actually educated them on what you just spoke about, and so they never ever got a income property. Right. They always got their principal residence, and I mean that was huge, home ownership in that sense. We always had a basement apartment to kind of help with the costs,
of course,
but they were always scared to make that leap, and it's really REC Canada's thought process that if we can just get everyone to think about getting the first property, not even scaling to get the second or third. I think just that one property can change your life, because to your point, in 25 years, if you don't do any of the fancy stuff that we're going to be speaking about today, the creative stuff in terms of refinancing and somewhat sexy, not really that sexy, but if you don't do any of that, you're still going to have a property that in 25 years is probably going to be worth at least 4 times, because we kind of know that every decade it doubles. So let's call it 4 times. But the mortgage is going to be paid off, and it was paid off by someone else. The fundamentals haven't even changed. No. All while like all this has been going on with interest rates, right? So if you're thinking about somebody right now, Chris, and for the thousands upon thousands of people that you've come across, what is it that you feel sometimes stops people from taking that step, that action step into getting into that first property?
I think there's a lot of misconception about being a landlord.
Well, man, you're good. Can you see upside down?
No.
For real, at 1:15, I'm speaking about the best practices for landlords.
So there you go, right? So because you hear, everybody hears the horror stories. And I know in your opening you talked about the headlines in the news, and it's newsworthy, right? You hear horror stories about it. So I think that's one thing that causes people to pause on that idea of, oh my gosh, I got to be a landlord.
And it happens, but not as much as people think it happens.
Correct. It's a lot. It's a business. You have to treat it as a business. But anything that is going to return you what real estate, what as a business can return you, is going to take a little bit of effort. It's not a free ride, right? So that's one thing I find. And it is also, I do find, and this is why I always try to stress to folks that I get it, it's not glamorous, right? We didn't invent Google, right? I'm not a tech genius, but what I can do is buy a piece of property and put it away, and slowly over time look like, well, I made a couple of good decisions, right? So I think that stops people, because North America in particular is we're very instant gratification, right? We're staring
social
at
media,
right?
Well, that dopamine
we're
hit,
staring
right?
We're staring at our phones and look at what this person has.
Yeah.
Well, the greatest wealth in the world has generally been created in 2 ways. One, you had to invent something or create some new concept, right? Or you bought real estate. And a lot of guys that invented stuff took whatever they made from it and bought a whole bunch of real estate. So, right, you think about that. And again, the luxury of time, you have to believe that, you're going to be around a few years from now to benefit from it. But I don't see why you want to look at the world any other way. It's going to look really good. But that generally stops people. So you have the fear of being a landlord and the fact that, but it takes so long. Mm-hmm. Time is going to go by, Jazz. We can't stop it, right? But if you commit yourself to saving, and it's not easy, especially in today's world, I get it, but slowly save for a down payment, put a little money aside, and plan for that opportunity, I promise you won't be disappointed.
I I've been saying a lot recently, and so maybe it's just because we spend time together that you brought that up in terms of time, and the next 5 years are coming. We're going to be here in 2029 doing our thing. So that's not really the question. I think the question everybody should be asking themselves is, what version of yourself is going to be coming to 2029, right? And if you take some small action steps, that doesn't mean that you have to invest, but you take this education, you listen to this over and over again, because you might have just got that one nugget that helped you. That will hopefully help you be a better version of yourself come 2029. Christopher, I could do this with you like for the full 5 hours.
I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun, Giles.
Well,
you make it easy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're good for my ego, by the way. Any parting words for the guys and gals that are on this marathon with us, brother?
So I think we want to just, I want to wrap up by just saying about the market. We talked about market conditions at the start, about what's kind of happening right now. I think the big thing we all have to remember is it is temporary. And I really want to, I hope people do take a step back and view the world from a longer time period. Not get caught up in the last 12, 24, 36 months of this incredibly, challenging time we've been through. You really have to look at it over time. Warren Buffett said, I couldn't tell you what the stock market's going to do this year. I have no idea. But I will tell you, if you buy a really high quality asset and hold it over time, you're going to be happy you did it. And I think that is the way you have to look at real estate. Let's take a step back. Let's take the noise of the headlines, like you said, and all the things out. Study what's really happening in the market. Learn what time has done for real estate, and find the time, figure out what's right for you. Because everybody listening today, every single person has a different right. Every single one of them, right? Because we're all different. Find out what's right for you. And educate yourself, like educate, and everybody that's here today has obviously bought into that concept because they're here to get educated, and you're doing an incredible job of it. And really think about real estate from a longer time frame, not what's happening in the moment. So if you have real estate today that you're worried about, I encourage you just to figure out how not to worry. Over time, it's going to be great. And think about it in 5-10 years from now, you're going to look back and go, boy, I'm so glad in those toughest moments I held on to that real estate, or in the times when it didn't look like a good idea to buy, I bought.
I love that.
And if we do that, you're going to have a great, great story long term.
Christopher, have an amazing Saturday and
You
an
too.
even better weekend.
My absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you.
You're doing great things.